I'm here to convince you to play Death Stranding, to avoid the mistake I nearly did. I played Death Stranding 1 at launch and I bounced off it hard. I gave up in just a couple of hours. After hearing so much praise for it over the years, I kept trying to go back and get into it. With the hype for the new sequel, I went back 4 more times. But every time I got to about the same point and just gave up. I wasn't enjoying it, the combat felt unbelievably clunky, the climbing was simplistic, and I hated the BT sections, where you have to sneak around invisible enemies slowly while holding your breath. It combined everything I hate in video games. There was an oxygen timer, I think I have some kind of unresolved trauma from Sonic the Hedgehog, invisible enemies, and 4 stealth sections with what seemed like an instant fail mechanic. Like, the game literally tells you, hey, if you get caught by these, there's going to be like a nuclear explosion. When Death Stranding 2 came out, Sony was kind enough to send me a copy so I could stream the game, and after seeing the gushing reviews saying how much better it was than the first one, I felt like I had to at least give it a try. I'd read the Wikipedia page for what happens in the first game to try and catch up, just a little plot synopsis, and I watched the excellent, enjoyable recap feature at the start of Death Stranding 2, and then I hopped in. Wow. I was absolutely blown away by the opening of this game. The first 2 hours were so good, and 2025 has already been an incredible year for games. Like, there's been Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Indiana Jones, Expedition 33, Dune Awakening, but this felt instantly like it was going to join my already quite long list of Game of the Year contenders. The graphics, the music, the acting, I was immediately completely sold on the game. One thing bothered me though. Despite reading what had happened in the first game, I felt like I was still a little bit lost. I didn't really know who the characters were or what they cared about. I didn't really understand what Sam had been through or why, or what had been discovered about, the BTs and the Death Stranding and the BBs and all of that kind of stuff. So I loaded it up again. I was a little bit reluctant. I'd bounced off this game so many times before. The last time was as recently as a month ago. But now I had a reason to play it. I wanted to make the most of this sequel, which seemed so incredible after a first taste. I wanted my first playthrough of it to be from a position where I sort of understood more about what was going on. So, back in Death Stranding 1, I pushed past a specific section that I'd always given up after, where you have to sneak past a load of BTs and then basically just go back to where you came from. Almost immediately after that, like within half an hour or so, the game gets so much better. I'd been teetering on the edge of the good bit of the game, and now I'd finally toppled over. The game suddenly starts giving you tools to overcome obstacles, it gives you vehicles to get around faster, it gives you advice and knowledge that makes things less daunting. I really think the first couple of hours of Death Stranding, the first game, are flawed. They spend so long trying to drill fear into you about the environment, and I think it works too well. It makes you think every journey will involve multiple ladders and ropes, and if you accidentally don't bring enough, you're going to be screwed. It makes you think that the mules, the human enemies, are terrifying and will chase you down and hunt you down across the landscape, stealing all of your cargo, and you're going to have to fight them to get it back. It makes you think that the BTs will absolutely end your game if they touch you, and you'll get sent really far back and you've got to avoid them at all costs. None of this is true. The game is just really good at scaring you into thinking that it is. Climbing is actually really easy. You never really need any ladders or ropes. You can even get vehicles across all of the landscapes if you try hard enough. I did a lot of it in a bloody van. There are, of course, moments where having a ladder helps, but you can always find another way around. It will just take a little bit longer sometimes. The mules are absolute idiots, and they're super easy to take out. If you hit them with a truck, they won't die, because killing something in this world is bad, and it means you've got to go do a long trip to take the body somewhere. But you can just hit them with a truck and they'll just get knocked out. And you quickly get a bunch of weapons that help you to take the mules down very, very easily. The BTs are still a bit scary at various times, but you get weapons that deal with them really, really effectively. You learn how to spot them more easily, so you can see them all the time. And I'm going to get into tiny little spoiler territory here, so if you want to go into Death Stranding 1, if I've already convinced you, go off and play it. But if you need a bit more convincing, here we go. If the BTs do find you, all that happens is that first of all they'll try and grab you. There'll be some tar will appear around you and your stuff will start sinking. You can get out of that really easy. You just have to keep on mashing, I think it's X, and grip onto both triggers, and you will be able to get away very easily. But even if they do grab you and you fall over and they end up putting you down, then it will just drag you, quite literally, into a boss fight where the boss will do everything it can to let you kill it. There's a lot of sound and fury, but it signifies nothing. It will jump around, it will look like it's doing loads of attacks, but it doesn't really do that much damage, and it will give you so many opportunities to kill it. If you've got some blood weapons on you, you can actually just kill the boss. If you don't, you can just run away. But if you kill the boss, you actually get loads of the Corallium, whatever it's called, and it removes all the BTs from the area for a while, to the point where sometimes I would just let myself get dragged down so I could kill the boss really easily, because it was actually better than just sneaking around. If you run out of weapons while you're fighting the boss, figures will emerge from the tar and actually restock you and give you more weapons. But even if, despite everything, you get killed by the BT bosses, all that will happen is you just come back to life because Sam's a repatriate. So you actually just get put straight back in the fight with a full health bar again. But if the BT actually manages to swallow you, which is the worst possible situation, it will cause a void out, which the game keeps on telling you is absolutely terrible. It's killed insane numbers of people. In the game, it's actually quite a cool thing to see, because all that happens is you come back to life where you were, but now there's a massive crater on the map and all of your gear will be damaged. But that's actually it. The crater won't destroy something that you really care about. It sort of wangles it so it puts it somewhere where you don't really care. The BTs will still be gone. All that's really happened is your gear's been damaged. So all of that fear about what would happen with the BTs doesn't really come to anything. In my whole playthrough of the game, which was about 35 hours to complete Death Stranding 1, and by the way, I ended up playing that across a weekend, which is wild, but anyway, I didn't see a void out once. I actually had to force it to happen to record this video. I had to try really hard to trigger it. So don't let that fear of the first part of the game put you off from seeing the rest. I wanted to rush through the game because I wanted to see the whole story as quickly as I could so I could get back to Death Stranding 2. So after a little bit, I put the difficulty down to very easy, and it made every combat encounter completely trivial. It doesn't seem to change a lot of the core of the game, but the enemies have a lot less health, and I think that maybe containers take a lot less damage, and it just means that you don't often have to redo anything. Generally, you'll be able to do everything first try, which is great. And experiencing that story was fantastic. I still don't think that the first game is necessarily a great game. There's a huge amount of exposition at the start and the end of the game. God, is there a lot at the end of the game. All of the story in the middle sort of 30 hours of the game is really just building up mysteries that all get solved at the end. The combat never really gets that good, and the movement is always a little bit clunky. Traversing the terrain doesn't really get more complicated. The world itself is much smaller than you'd think and not particularly varied. But as a whole experience, if you don't pick it apart and you just take it in for what it is, that you are working out how to transport stuff across the world as effectively as you can, it's great. You really do go on a journey through the game, and there is nothing else quite like it. Kojima did manage to make something that's a new genre, which is what he set out to do. The cutscenes are all great, and I really did want to see it through to the end to find out what happened. The ending drags on, like it definitely does, but there's so many answers and so much is tied up, which feels really important to know about before you go into Death Stranding 2. I'd say, personally, reading the Wikipedia page and watching the Death Stranding 2 recap gave me maybe 20% of the story. There's a lot of depth and lore, and I'm so glad I can now return to Death Stranding 2 and experience it more fully. And what a game Death Stranding 2 is. The opening hours are infinitely better than the first game. They immediately give you access to tools to deal with the biggest and sort of most common problems. They make BTs easier to deal with and spot, And the game really sharpens its focus on the idea of travelling and crossing vast distances, which to me was the real strength of that first game. You know, the story and the journeys, those were the things I cared about. The combat, kind of less so. Plus, the whole thing just looks absolutely incredible. I really do think Death Stranding 2 is something special, and after spending 35 hours to play through the first game across like 4 or 5 days, I've literally sat in front of the TV with a fan on me because it's so hot in the UK, and just ploughed through that first game, and I very, very much enjoyed it. And I can see why it made people so excited for the sequel. So if you're thinking about playing through Death Stranding 2 and you've got some free time, because, you know, I was rushing through and it still took me 35 hours, I strongly recommend playing through the first game. Get through those first few hours, put it on easy if you don't like the combat, tune out all of the nonsense, like don't get too nitpicky about all the stuff that I've been nitpicky about, and just immerse yourself in a story, because it is a hell of a journey.